Hi guys, it's Lori. Hey, I wanted to talk about something a little different today than what I normally talk about. A little bit of a story time, a couple different story times. Um, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news, but if you go on Twitter, it can absolutely drive you out of your mind, especially if you read comments. Same thing on YouTube. Let me tell you, people on YouTube can be absolutely nasty. One thing that I've noticed, and I started uploading videos to bitchute because I'm trying to transfer over because YouTube is shutting down channels with substance, and they seem to be promoting channels with, you know, not anything against these channels, but they're drama channels. They're vlogs, kind of like mine, but they don't have any substance at all, and they seem to be promoting those. So there's something going on. I don't know if BitChute's any better, but anyway, that's besides the point. So I'll try to remember to put a link to my BitChute. So, as you know, we have a bunch of, I believe, survivors, hashtags going on, and that kind of stuff, and it has to do with the Kavanaugh accusers, Christine Ford, and then somebody else, Ramirez or something like that, and there's no proof, and the thing that bothers me about that is because I can look at this from both angles, okay? I have a couple different, I'll do it quickly, a couple different story times here. Back in the early 80s, my oldest son's dad was extremely abusive, and he was a heavy drinker and into drugs and all that kind of stuff. I was very, very young. I was very abused. I ended up marrying him. He was physically, emotionally, mentally abusive. Spiritually abusive, too. It was really kind of crazy because he claimed to really have a strong faith in God, but whatever. And even when I saw him later in life, he was still the same. So, but he used to, I mean, he's broken bones. I mean, he was pretty abusive. So I remember back in the 80s, though, the domestic violence laws in my state were not in place. Not really. I remember one day he was hitting me. He was beating me outside. We were outside. I think I had run outside in order to get away from him in the hopes that people would hear or see and somebody would call the police. We didn't have cell phones back then. You know, it wasn't like that. And, I mean, you could literally see that he had been beating me. My face was bruised. I had been crying. I was a mess. You know, it was awful. And the police did show up. And 2 cruisers, I remember, pulled over. There were 4 police officers there. And they started harassing me, pretty much. Basically, like, what did you do? You know, they pulled us each aside. And when he heard me telling the officer what was happening, and it was quite obvious, like I said, I mean, you could see it. Even if in today's day and age, if I would have said nothing happened, they wouldn't have believed me. It would have been different. But I remember he took a little envelope. Coke used to come in little, I don't know if it still does, but it used to come in little, like they would fold it up like a piece of paper. It looked like a little envelope. And he threw it in my purse right in front of the cop. And then he says, check her purse, she's got drugs on her. And the cop says, can I check your purse? And now, keep in mind, I'm 17, 18 years old. So I'm terrified. And I'm like, you just saw what he did. And he's like, I'm going to check your purse. And I gave him, I don't remember if I said yes, but he started checking my purse. And I'm like, look, he's going to kill me. And the cop's like, oh, well, what's this? And he just saw him put it in there. There's no way he couldn't have. I mean, he did it right in front of him. And I was like, it's not mine. You saw what he just did. And the cop goes, well, you know what? I'm going to give you a break. You need to go and just go home and relax. And I was like, look, if you leave, he's going to kill me. And the cop kind of chuckled at me, and he goes, all right, I'll tell you what. I'll give you a head start. And I was like, what? And he goes, I'll give you a head start. You can run. And I'm like, what? No, you have to help me. And even as I'm saying, you have to help me, I'm like begging this cop. He starts counting. 10, 9, So I ran. I ran. I ran down, I think it's 1, 2, maybe about 3 blocks. I stopped at a payphone. I called my sister, and she said she was coming, and I said, okay, I'm going to keep running. So I hung up with her, and I kept running, and we finally met. She got in her car, and she met me. That's how it was back in the 80s. Since then, when I got a little older, and after he left me, by the way. That's how weak I was. Thank God he did. And I was still afraid of him. He moved to Alaska, and he would call and threaten me, and I was still afraid of him. I really believed him when he said he was going to jump on a plane and come home. I mean, now that I look back on it, it was ridiculous, but I was I was an abused woman. So anyway, later I began advocating for domestic violence. I sat in with, local government. I went up, I talked with them. I've been advocating. I've advocated for women in court. Now we do have, back then, the cops weren't even trained in domestic violence. Now we have our own domestic violence unit. I remember when they first made it, it was one officer was the domestic violence unit, but now it's not like that. They're all trained in it. The laws have changed. Now, if there's any suspicion, one or both need to go. The laws have changed. They're not perfect yet, but at least they've changed. And people are starting to realize, okay, this is a real thing. I am also a survivor of rape by a stranger. I almost died. I was left to die on the street. I'm not going to go into that whole story, but I was left to bleed to death on the street. By the grace of God, a man in a white truck came and picked me up and brought me to the hospital. I believe he was an angel. Saved my life. I was in the hospital for quite some time with that. And since then, I have been assaulted since. I am a very strong advocate for survivors, victims to survivors. I offer counseling. Like I said, I advocate in court. I advocate for services. A lot of times women don't want to speak out if they are victims of domestic violence or rape or anything. Not only women and men. Men, I know people don't want to believe this, but men get abused all the time. You would be amazed if you knew the statistics. I don't have them off the top of my head, but there's almost as many men that are abused as women, and that's reported. So, as you know, many women don't report. Same with men. Many men don't report because even now in today's day and age, you go to a police station and you try to get a restraining order against this crazy woman, and the police are going to kind of treat you like, oh, come on, buddy, But it happens more and more and more. I have sons. I always told them, be careful. Because women can lie. So yes, men and women can be assaulted, but men and women can also lie. That's why, thank God, we have innocent until proven guilty in this country. Thank God we don't go by the mob mentality. Just because somebody accuses somebody of something doesn't mean they did it. I have been falsely accused, not of sexual assault, but of other things. I went through a major, oh my gosh, a big chunk of my life, false accusations being put down because, see, I went from that husband to who I thought was the love of my life, who was different. He was passive-aggressive, and after we broke up, the breakup, in my opinion, was he did me a favor, but after, he went after my kids to hurt me, and it worked, but it also hurt the kids, and I was falsely accused of a lot of things. I mean, that would take up 3 other videos, because that stole a good chunk of my life and my kids' life, and we're still all trying to recover from that. Forgiveness, big deal. But anyway, just want to tell one more story, just so we can get this straight about how important it is to not only, yes, we have to believe somebody when they say they've been assaulted or abused, but you still have to investigate. There are young girls and young women in my life right now who I know for a fact are liars and would put their men in prison without even a blink of an eye and not even think twice about it if there was something in it for them. So, okay, so when one of my sons was young, I'm going to say, I can't remember exactly how old, but he was very young. I'm going to say maybe 14. He and his friend slept over the house, and dummy me actually slept. Well, the two boys, we had 3 different exits to that place. The 2 boys left that night. Took off in the middle of the night. Got up in the morning, I made them breakfast, didn't even have a clue. I had no idea they left. Until I got a call from a detective from the Manchester Police Department. So, I'm talking to the officer, the detective, and the detectives had the names mixed up. And my son was white, the other boy was black. Thank God in this case, because that's the way that I figured out that they had the names mixed up. Because, you know, he was talking about my son, and I'm like, wait a minute, my son's white. And he's like, oh, okay, all right, we've got the names mixed up. Not that it matters, but it did matter because it was a big charge. What happened is they snuck out, they went to this girl's house, this young girl, same age as them, went to school with them. I guess her parents had a basement, and there was a door right into the basement. Both boys went. The other boy had sex with the girl. Consensual sex. I know, they're way too young to be having sex, but they did it. And Mom woke up, went downstairs, freaked out, kicked both boys out. Girl doesn't want to get in trouble, says he raped her. Now, by the grace of God, they had on the computer messages, you know, come over, blah, 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 all this stuff. So it proved, the detective told me, we're going to do an investigation. But, you know, we're pretty sure the girl's lying, but we still have to do an investigation. And he told me, he said, ask your son. He goes, I don't know how close you are with your son, but ask him if he had sex with her too, because this is a very, very important. We're talking about a rape charge. They, even though they're minors, they could go down for a lot of years. They could be tried as adults. I mean, this could turn into like a breaking and entry, a rape, you know. So I just sat my son down. I was devastated. We went down to the police station, and I was like, tell me the absolute truth. And I do have a really, really close relationship with my son, even though he snuck out and I didn't know it. Kids will be kids. They do stuff. Even, no matter how hard you try, they do stuff. I didn't even know it. I had no idea. I'm sitting there making them breakfast. I get the call from the detective. But, he swore, because I told him, you're going down for rape. And they had the names mixed up initially. So initially they were looking at my son, but it turns out it was the other kid. But I asked him, are they going to find your DNA? I don't care. I believe it's consensual, you know, if you guys are telling me that. But are they going to find your DNA? Because if so, I gotta get you a good lawyer. That's how easy a rape charge can come about. Now, I'm not saying that every girl that reports is lying. I also know another man. He has 2 young daughters. Really nice guy, but when he was younger, he was a pig. And I'm not saying that's right either, but he's no rapist, okay? So he was, I believe, 17, and in the state that he was in, 17 was the legal age. And there was a girl that he met, and I think she was 15, and maybe 16 was, I can't remember, but he was 17, almost 18, so, and she was 15, but she lied to him and told him she was 16. She lived in, like, one of those, like, homes for kids, you know, it's not a jail, but it's like a home. She lived in one of those and had a curfew. Well, they went out, they had sex, and she was late for curfew. So she was scared. She didn't tell him that, but she was scared. And he said, now this is going to get a little gross, but he said when they were having sex, before he knew it, he was having anal sex. Now, keep in mind, he's a kid too, and I don't know how that happens. I didn't ask for details, but he's like, okay, he went with it. I know, nasty. That's what she wanted. He said it was good. It was all good. She was all kissy, huggy, lovey, whatever. Well, then he drops her back off. Next thing he knows, he's got the police at his door. she's accused him of rape. And because it was anal sex, it made even a bigger case for her. They really believed her. Of course, they found his DNA. He did end up getting convicted of that. And now he's, I don't know what kind of time he served. It wasn't, I don't know. But anyway, he got out, he married, he has 2 young girls, and he is a registered sex offender. So girls do lie, okay? Men lie, women lie, kids lie. That's why investigations need to happen. That's why we have innocent until proven guilty. You can't make somebody guilty in the public courts either, because that can destroy somebody's life just as well. That's why I'm always talking against gossip. Whether you believe the Kavanaugh accuser or not is not the point. What I'm saying is just know that this stuff happens. All right, I know I rambled on and on, but that's kind of just a few stories from my life. Leave hate if you want, leave love, subscribe, go to my bitchute account if you like. Normally my videos are more about, uplifting, spiritual growth, mental, emotional growth, but I just kind of wanted to throw this out there, and I'll talk to you guys soon.